Y'all had a good WordCamp US so far?
It was so nice returning to the great city of Nashville. And I am forlorn. This is our last time here, but excited about St. Louis next year. If I kick over the tea, don't laugh too much. Welcome to State of the Word, Nashville, Tennessee, at WordCamp United States 2018. There's been a lot that's been going on, so I'd actually like to allow WordPress a chance to reintroduce itself. It is the reason we're here. WordPress isn't a physical thing. It's not a set of code. It's kind of an idea. It's backed by the full faith and credit of every person and company that depends on it. It only exists in the space between our heads and our minds. It has a constitution. It's built on the 4 freedoms. The freedom to run the program for any purpose, freedom to study how the program works and change it, to redistribute it, and to share your changed versions. This is like our Bill of Rights. It's the fundamental things that's included with every single copy of WordPress and every single plugin and theme that you get from it, certainly the ones you get from WordPress.org. This freedom is not just theoretical, it's practical. The data in WordPress is totally portable. You can run it just about anywhere, from Amazon Web Services to Raspberry Pi. And as we like to say, it is both free and priceless at the same time. Another beautiful thing about WordPress is its scalability. And I don't mean this purely in the sort of technical sense, that it can run a small site to something that runs hundreds of millions of pages per day. But you can keep WordPress with you your entire life. and it'll grow with you, and you can grow with it. It's one of the few things on the internet and in technology that you can be sure that what you put into it, you'll be able to either use it or get out a decade later. And we've been doing this now for 15 years. And who got to make it to the sponsor section today? See some of the booths? Get some cool t-shirts, some cool socks. Like, you really don't even need a pack for WordCamp. You can just come with that day's clothes, and you can kind of fill up the rest once you get here. WordPress is supported by a really robust commercial ecosystem, one that I estimate, represented by the companies in that sponsor hall and others, to be over $10 billion per year. So you add all this up together, and we're united by a common mission, which we say is democratizing publishing. Now, what does that mean? And I know Morten talked a little bit about this earlier. To us, democratize means that everyone can use it, regardless of the language they speak, the device used, physical ability, income or economic ability, location, and finally, technical proficiency. You add all this up, and you look at the last 15 years of work, it combines to about a 32.5% market share, which is coming along, almost to a third. And like I said a few years ago, we're building a web operating system. It's an operating system for the open, independent web, and a platform that others can truly build on. It's also why we're all here. And if you are watching this on the live stream or later on a video, or you're here in this room, we'll put some more chairs in next time. Sorry. You're in rarefied air compared to the vast majority of WordPress users that will never watch a video like this, that will never come to a WordCamp. And the primary experience of it is just the software. And as you may have noticed, as we were filing in, we had some inspirational quotes on loop. It might have been something you recognized in your own experience or someone you've helped. As far as WordPress has come, I think it's good to remind ourselves that we have maybe even further to go, that we do have a lot of problems. There's been a lot of questions this year about why we're doing certain things, like why we're working on Gutenberg. And I think it's good to return always to users to find that. So we're going to go through something that is super awkward. And this is watching user test videos. Who's ever done this before? For those of you who didn't raise your hands, please prepare yourself.
Something like this needs to be easy to use, and I wouldn't say any of this is easy to use. This is frustrating to use. This feels like writing a blog back in 2005.
Feels like writing a blog back in 2005. Next up.
Add two images side by side. Why can't I do that? I'm thinking that I want to start here and then we'll put the cursor here and go back, but I'm not able to do so. So
it gets worse.
Instead, I'm just going to see what other options I have. Let's see, so
don't click that.
If I do an align, I'm going to... No, they're going to go right underneath each other.
Add two images side by side. Why can't I do that?
Got image on the left now, some text on the right, so I guess on line right, hello. It's not exactly to the right of it, but it is... Okay.
Oh.
I didn't do that. I was just clicking enter. It's not directly to the right of it, but that's about as best as that's going to go. And then a paragraph below it, so... No. It's hard to get the actual thing... Okay, so we need to go back to there. This is very finicky. This does not work.
This is very finicky. This does not work.
Just move this image up. Why? Why are you not moving?
There's more.
I am not seeing an option So when I go to the Add Media page, there's no video available for me to add.
And add a caption to the video. How would I add a caption? I have no clue.
This is getting pretty painful, isn't it? How do I add a caption? I have no clue. I will not subject any of us to any more of those. But that kind of was painful, right? I've likened it before to like when you're watching a horror movie and you're like, no, don't go in that room. You see folks just trying to do, and nothing, by the way, that was just described there, I think a reasonable person would say should be that difficult, right? Why should it be that hard to have an image with some text next to it? We've all seen that on web pages hundreds, if not thousands of times. So when you start to try to lay things out, particularly, as you might have guessed, those were all tests with WordPress 4.9, it can be very, very difficult. There's also other things. This is a quote from a review that says, if you've ever tried to copy text from Microsoft Word and then paste it into a poster page with WordPress, then you know it never looks right when you publish it to your blog. Suffice it to say, Word and WordPress are not very compatible. I like that little closer there. Suffice it to say, this status quo is not good enough. And this has been our editor experience for over a decade now. And for many of us, we've gotten used to it or learned to work around. For me, one of the big learning moments was when I realized just how often I was clicking over to code view from the visual view in the WYSIWYG. So I enjoyed composing things in the visual view, but sometimes I'd be trying to put text inside or outside of a link, or put an image at a certain point in a paragraph, and it just wasn't going right. And I'd be like, I wouldn't even think of it actually, because I'm fluent in HTML and CSS. So I would just, and we made the code view switcher so easy to get to, I would just go back and forth all the time. I started to just count that. And in the course of writing a post, a simple post, something that shouldn't be difficult, I would sometimes do that 5, 10 times. And I bet if we looked around this room to the most elite folks in the WordPress world, we probably have started to take that for granted. So the concept that we think can fix this is blocks. So what are blocks? Blocks are predictable, tactile, and can be as simple as a text block or as rich as an entire e-commerce interface that you can kind of zoom into when you go to a block. See, the problem with WordPress's and many other CMS's approach in the past with what we were calling WYSIWYG is we tried to hide everything. Gutenberg takes that HTML structure that's behind the page and makes it more explicit, and then simplifies it into the mental model of blocks, which is something that is both more apparent to people and we can reuse across the entire interface. Regardless of how powerful, like a block is, for example, an e-commerce one or a video one or some of the ones I'll show you in a little bit, you can interact with them in the same way. They have a consistent interface for adding, deleting, and moving them around and laying them out. Let me show you some videos that are a little bit more fun, which is, let's build a quick little site with Gutenberg. As Bebo Valdez, who the release was named for, an amazing Cuban musician, also the father of Chucho Valdez, one of my other favorite pianists. We're coloring the image. Oh, look, there's some text next to an image. That was possible. Adding a YouTube. Found one right there. Make it a little bigger. Let's put a little gallery just to fill it out. And voila. And what we saw looked just like what you can now see on the site. Whew. Oh, thank you. Copying and pasting has also been improved. So this is a Google document. Pretty complex. Got some layout, got some images, got some different things. About to Control-A to select all. We can paste right there. Look, exactly what we saw works just fine. This works for Google Docs. It works for Quip. It works for Office 365. It even works for Microsoft Word. So Word and WordPress, suffice it to say, can now work together. We also added some cool developer features that we're curious to see how people are going to take advantage of. So this is actually exporting a block. So you can take any reusable block, and it'll give you a little chunk of JSON. You can then go and take that chunk of JSON, as this is a pretty meaty one, and upload that into, we can import from JSON, creates a reusable block, and then you can use that to start a page, or post, or anything. Building on a common pattern that we've seen in WordPress page builders. Ta-da, that's everything we just saw. So this is what we've been calling Gutenberg. It is the bulk of what we've been working on the past few years, and it's been going fairly well. We put out Gutenberg as a plugin. It started first, actually, if people might not remember, but the first few months, it was actually just purely in JavaScript, which is part of the reason it's been so embeddable and easily reused by other projects. We turned it into a plugin, kind of summer last year. Summer of this year, we started promoting it a lot more. And prior to the 5.0 release, got it to 1.2 million active installs and a run rate of about 40,000, just under 40,000 posts per day. It's a huge amount of activity, over 8,000 commits from over 340 unique contributors. And we've also been talking about it everywhere we can. At WordCamps, we've had 277 WordCamp talks on it, 555 meetup events, and over 1,000 blog posts done across the various WordPress-related things talking about Gutenberg. So Gutenberg was out as a plugin, and the reason for doing that was both to get it more widely tested and to allow the ecosystem to start to build around it. We've seen some great results there so far from themes. So we've got over 100 Gutenberg themes already on the directory. We have a new Gutenberg block tag that is currently live for plugins and will be live for themes very soon. We're launching with that the 2019 theme, which, as you can see, has both a beautiful front end. That matches exactly what you see in the WP admin. So 2019 was our idea to show off what a sort of Gutenberg native theme can do, and it's not even what's going to be able to come. People have already been building beautiful sites with Gutenberg. Here is the Indigo Mill, and showing both the site and some of the blocks that it's using. It's paragraph block, button block, image blocks, media and text. A really cool one called Luminous Solar that was actually using some more custom blocks. But again, this is a site that if you were to tell someone to do in a WYSIWYG of WordPress before, only using a WYSIWYG, not using a special theme, not using special templates, anything else, would have been basically possible. Some of you might recall a few years ago, I exhorted everyone to learn JavaScript deeply. How's that been going? Huh? Who feels like they've gotten JavaScript deeply down pat? We've got at least a dozen people. All right. Phase 2 will be easy. It is a challenging language. So I'm going to actually say something a lot easier as homework from this one, which is to learn blocks deeply. This is actually pretty fun. XWP made a Jenga set that corresponds to Gutenberg blocks, which I thought was some of the coolest swag I've seen this year, so good job, XWP. But as I said, the blocks are the new fundamental building blocks. They're the DNA. They're the sort of musical notes that we can then build everything else on, much like Western music has kind of 12 different notes or tones. Everything is built from that. A few chords, like in a song like the blues, 3 basic chords. These are what you can create almost anything you can imagine from. So far with blocks, we have about 70 native blocks, over 100 third-party blocks, over 1,000 different layer configuration and different blocks related to that. Here are some blocks in the wild. So built into Gutenberg, and now in your new block editor in WordPress 5.0, there's a selector that lets you kind of search, find things, go for it. We've also had, with the interface of blocks, plugins like Yoast SEO, now being able to give you per block readability analysis. We have blocks like this one, 360 Image by Kevin Bazira. It allows you to embed VR 360 images, so the sort of marrying of Gutenberg and VR is finally happening a little bit. Google did their AMP block, Google and Friends, I should say, that can give you per block suggestions on whether the content is AMP compatible. Drop It from Riyadh, right here in the front row, shows you can kind of bring in images and Giphies and things. E-commerce has been early adopters of blocks, so this is an Equid store. By the way, I love that preview. It embeds the entire store right there. You can click through it from that one block. For WooCommerce, there's a products block. Lets you choose what you're showing. So this is choosing the music category. It shows it very inline right as you're editing it. And then again, you publish it, It looks great on the front ends, right there. And then BigCommerce, new entrants to WordPress and also new sponsors, so thank you. Shows. You can add products, remove products, show what's there, and then on the front end, it looks fantastic. We've got profile blocks. We've got recipe blocks. Yeah, someone likes to cook. We've got tarot card blocks. So if you want to predict the future of WordPress, I think you can use this one. This was a block written with only about, I think it was 137 lines of code by Dennis Snell, just kind of showing off that using the new React JavaScript framework that Gutenberg's written in, you can create this really cool little sketch thing. We've got blocks within blocks within blocks. So one cool one to check out is a Jetpack contact form block. If you check it out, it's actually just a series of nested blocks. So it provides each of the sub-blocks, both has the functionality, full blocks, but also the accessibility. So all the work we did for accessibility around ARIA labels, keyboard navigation, everything is inherited by all the sub-blocks. There's some fun ones. Longtime WordPress community member Nick Hamsey has made some fun ones, including a guide post. This is kind of like an automatic table of contents. So as you add headings, it'll automatically create that table of contents. Ghostwriting, which I hadn't seen before. If you all know ghostwriters, instead of you can ghost write the WordPress. 5 people got that reference. So make it ghostwriter, publish it, and then on the front end, see, it's coming in. See, that wasn't too scary. I also really like his spoiler alert block, so that says out. So you ever write about a movie? Everyone lives. Make it a spoiler alert. Let's also style it a little better. So we can make that bigger. Large fonts, maybe a different background color. Publish it, and now on the front end, click to reveal. Ta-da! Movie reviews and spoiler alerts around the web will now be safe. We've also seen the design aspects of Gutenberg started to be really taken advantage of. This is one of my other favorite ones I've seen so far. It's called the Caxton Shape Divider block from Poodle Press. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. So as you can see, what they're doing is sort of choosing different kind of shapes that can go in between the blocks, matching the colors of the blocks that came before and after it. So I think we got some waves in there. I think we're also going to show a cloud one, which I really like, because sometimes I get asked whether WordPress runs in the cloud. I love that preview animation. Go watch it all day. And so this shows, as you can see, creates this into beautiful transitions between blocks. It actually addresses one of my key worries when we started creating blocks, was that everything people were creating with them looked, well, rather blocky. So bringing the different shapes, I think, really helps. There are block collections being created everywhere you can expect. And these are plugins that include many, many different blocks. And there's even third-party libraries, so places you can go online. Like this is editorblockswp.com, has a huge library. The Gutenberg Hub is talking about them. GutenbergCloud.org, which is also the same folks who have already ported Gutenberg to Drupal and are launching sites for clients live with Gutenberg and Drupal combined. Ahmad Awais, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, created an amazing framework called the Gutenblock Toolkit that is actually responsible and behind. It's kind of been used to create the vast majority of all the blocks I just showed you, which is kind of amazing. So let's do a quick round of applause for Ahmad for creating that. It's very impressive. There's been a few others, like the Block Lab, the Lazy Blocks, which allow you to create blocks right from within WP Admin, so it's kind of a visual builder for blocks. And on amazing sites like CSS Tricks, there are now Gutenberg and tutorials for blocks. So that's where we've been. For this next bit, I'd like to invite on, is Ginny nearby? We've got, this is a very real support message that came in, actually on WordPress.com. Because as WordPress.com was rolling out, there was different states you could be in where you'd get some Gutenberg or some not Gutenberg, and you're going to read, it's actually in French, and you're going to read the French. I'll read the English. But, oh, Read the French
Probably
and
best if I do
translate.
the French.
Yeah.
You do the English?
Yeah, I'll do the English.
Let's go for it.
But you got a mic already.
Yeah,
Wow, we're
I'm all
getting
mic'd up, ready to
fancy.
go. Ready?
Yes.
Je n'arrive pas à construire ma page, c'est trop difficile.
What does that mean?
I thought you were going to tell us.
There's no notes.
Oh dear. This job is more than I thought it was going to be. I cannot make my page, it's too difficult. And then he goes on to say, je veux avoir un éditeur simple pour construire ma page. I want a simple editor to be able to build my page.
And then the support response was, do you remember, oh, there's one more.
Oh, that's all
Do you
I
remember
have.
what it looked like? Was it this with the plus signs that you could click to add content? So initially, the support person thought that they were asking to go back to the old WYSIWYG, because there's been so much in the community saying how the old one was simpler. And did it have the plus content, like blocks of content? And the response was, oui.
Oui,
Thank you.
de rien.
I know, despite WordCamp Paris, I did not quite get my French down. This was so cool that actually this person new to WordPress was saying that this thing, which in some ways is much, much more difficult and has a lot more complexity, more buttons to click and things to do, was actually simpler than the WYSIWYG that it replaced for what they were trying to accomplish. This is exactly what we're trying to do with this whole 2 years of work, was make it so it was both easier for new people, like this French person, and more powerful for developers, which we just demonstrated. So again, thank you very much, Jenny. One of the other parts of democratization was that it's regardless of device used. So these are our current stats that show desktop being a bit more than mobile, but mobile is growing faster than almost everything else out there, and it will be where everything is in the future. So everything that's in 5.0 and Gutenberg is completely responsive. As you can see, it works at every single size on the web version of it. And we test on iPads and Android tablets and phones and everything. And we're also been investing into our mobile apps. This is a more invisible part of WordPress, but I think one of our most important long-term investments. In the past month, there have been over 1.3 million posts published through the mobile apps and 3.1 million photos and videos uploaded. I'm also very excited to announce that the mobile apps are going to be getting Gutenberg in February 2019. This is everything that you just saw with this. Well, some of what you just saw will be available on mobile apps. You'll be able to navigate and manipulate blocks in the native apps, just like you could on the web. This also means that just like Gutenberg is open source and has been adapted for other CMSs and other use cases already, there will be fully open source implementations of parsing and manipulating Gutenberg blocks available for iOS and Android with beautiful open source code and available to even be embedded in other apps, which I think is pretty darn cool. So, to review, WordPress exists to increase access to publishing. We had a fundamental core problem that I hope I demonstrated to you, that many parts of it that we might take for granted were too difficult to use. We started the Gutenberg project, and phase 1, I think, makes a strong progress into addressing them. We've created this new fundamental building block, the blocks I just showed you, which are a mental model you can use right now for editing posts and pages, but really across all, we want to apply it across all of WordPress. And we're going to be bringing all this to devices of the future. So I think it's a good point to say thank you to phase 1, and particularly highlight the work of Matthias, who couldn't be here, Johan, and Tammy Lister. Tammy, are you here? Could you please stand up since you are representing the entire team? Let's do a big round of applause. Whew. Congratulations. How does that feel to see all that stuff? I know, it's been a long road to here. I think 46, 47 major releases and iterations of Gutenberg in the wild. So what's coming next? All right, this is not a finish line. This is almost a starting line for the next generation of WordPress. So we've been talking a bit about phase 2, and I'd like to re-explain some of the things that we have in mind for phase 2, since we're going to start work on it tomorrow at Contributor Day. So the next challenge of WordPress is, now that we've made kind of the stuff inside the box easier, you still have these other things on your page. So if you were to look at an average website, this is your site, Phase 1 is all that stuff in that blue box there. It's inside the post content field, is one way to think about it. Phase 2 is the rest of it. I'm going to show you a scary part of WordPress you might not have looked at in a while. Remember this screen? It's still there. This is widgets.php, a little bit old school. This is what widgets plus Gutenberg could look like. The idea that you can bring every single block and actually manage your sidebar content areas with Gutenberg blocks. Anything you can put in your post and page, you can now put in sidebars. And because they're fully responsive, the interface adapts and the block should fully adapt. This is what that could look like in the customizer. You can have blocks and content. We've converted widgets and elements into blocks. We will convert widgets and elements into blocks. And this will now, we will eliminate one additional thing that people, when learning WordPress, have to figure it out. Because, probably things we'll show next year is someone saying, well, we won't need to do it because it will be done by next year. But I imagine people are starting to get support requests that say, hey, why can't I put this widget into my post? And why can't I put these cool blocks in my post into my widget areas? The other nice thing about bringing along widgets is it brings along really the past decade of WordPress themes that all already support widget content areas. This is about to show you something else that you might not have seen in a while. Remember menus? This, we're going to need a little bit of experimentation, but you could definitely imagine a way of editing menus inline, or that we could create a different interface where there's sort of a restricted number of blocks that you could then arrange into a different menu, and perhaps even preview live on the front as you're doing so. Basically, a simple way to imagine this, and actually one of the full projects that'll be going for 5.1, is taking everything you can currently do in menus and putting that inside a block, so that what we call navigation menus today, by the way, we're also going to try to rename it because menus is confusing for restaurants. They're like, oh yeah, how many menus do I need? Lunch, dinner, what else? We're going to bring that all over. So phase 1 is done. We've got the fundamental building blocks for writing and editing. Phase 2 is thinking outside of post content. The focus of phase 2 is really about customization. We need to upgrade themes, widgets, and menus. And if you want to test this out before the new versions of WordPress come out, we're going to be re-experimenting with all this in the Gutenberg plugin, just like we did during phase 1. So if you have upgraded to 5.0 and Gutenberg was deactivated for you, consider reactivating that plugin, and you will get the latest and greatest of what's going to happen. We've talked about phase 1 and phase 2 about a year now. I have publicly promised that I am going to reveal what I think phases 3 and phases 4 could be right here in front of you all today. Any guesses? Just out of curiosity. Well, what's that? Emoji? Well, that's all phases. So we've been looking a lot again at. I think if you ever never know where to go with software, it's always great to go back to users and listen to what they're doing, listen to what they're struggling with, and also to look in the ecosystem. What are people installing plugins for? What are they sort of working around? One of the areas that I think is really key for that, and a place we can start to explore using the new fundamental building blocks of Gutenberg and the developmental framework that allows, is collaboration, multi-user editing, and workflows. These are 3 areas right now. I'll be actually 100% honest. One of the reasons the copy and paste from Google Docs to Gutenberg is so good is that when I'm writing a post that I'm going to get reviewed and collaborate on with a bunch of people, Google Docs is better for that. But if we can integrate these workflows directly into WordPress, we can integrate with them with user systems, we can integrate them with revisions, and we can allow them to be fully extensible in a way that a SaaS service like a Google Docs will never, ever be. So that's an idea for phase 3, and you might notice that this is listed as 2020. I should also clarify that phase 1 and phases 2, that makes more sense, are not done. Everyone is not leaving the editor and moving away from the things inside of post content. There's a lot more work to do there. And in fact, the next sort of minor update to WordPress enhancement release will have lots of improvements in performance and everything. So we're going to keep working on the core Gutenberg. We can now build some more things on top of it. There's already been some demos using things like WebRTC to allow real-time co-editing. You can do per-block locking for collaboration. It's some really exciting stuff that blocks allow you to do. The other exciting thing about this is as you are able to use blocks to lay out your entire website, bringing that workflow, approval, statuses, and revisions to the entirety of your site design is something that right now is really only available for folks using source control. Phase 4 gets a little murkier, but you might remember earlier I said that part of democratizing is doing things regardless of language. So one thing I think it's important for us to address in WordPress is an official way for multilingual sites. This is something that I get asked every single year whenever I do a WordCamp in Quebec or anything in Europe. And I'm very excited that now we can say, we have an idea for when and how and where we're going to do it. Core is now open. So we basically froze all new features coming into WordPress Core to get all the focus and all the effort on Gutenberg. Now that it's open, I think there's a few different areas that we can sort of subdivide what I just described into that can be projects with individual leaders and individual teams. These are a few of them. Don't worry about writing all this down. It will be a post on the make/core P2 any second now. And that is where we'll be able to discuss it. The one thing I will highlight, though, is auto updates. Optional auto updates for plugins, themes, and major versions of WordPress. I think we're ready for this now. We need a block directory that sort of makes it easy to discover. And I would like to have actually inline installation and activation of blocks when you're inside of Gutenberg. And finally, we need to do a lot of triage and work. We have over 6,500 open issues in our core track right now. There have been some requests like about moving to a different bug tracker or things like that. I would feel bad about doing that before we cleaned up some of our home first. So that is some of what's coming. Other things that we have in mind that maybe a few of you have asked about before, but who would like us to raise our minimum version of PHP? Look on the Make Core P2 post. There's an amazing post from Gary now proposing that we move to PHP 5.6 in April 2019, and by this time next year, have PHP 7 be the minimum version for building things on top of WordPress. It's kind of funny, things like 8,000 commits worth of work, and I got a little bit of applause, changing a minimum version number. People go wild. I would like to say thank you in a Marie Kondo way. Thank you for the service, version 4.9. I thought it was our longest release of WordPress ever, but actually it came in 1 day shy of version 2.0 to 2.1, the cycle. There were over 173 million downloads of the 4.9 branch, and we got up to 68.4% of all the known WordPresses in the world running the 4.9 branch. This is amazing, and I would like to thank 4.9. So please join me. It was a hearty release. We also slipped a lot in there. So since we had this kind of longer period where we weren't shipping major versions, we actually put some really cool things like widget updates, enhancements to the code editor, everyone's favorite, the months of GDPR work, and a very successful try Gutenberg callout, which was part of what led to Gutenberg being so widely adopted and tested prior to the release. It's actually the best tested code we've ever merged into WordPress. The other exciting thing, and I don't know if you noticed this, but we released WordPress 5.0. This was a release date that was discussed perhaps more than many others that have been in WordPress history. It was a little bit controversial putting it out on the 6th. So we released it on December 6th, which was Thursday, a few days ago. The software is ready. We put it through the testings. We were a bit worried about doing it before WordCamp, so there was some very good discussion about should we do it after this event. But like I said, the vast majority of the WordPress world actually isn't here, and we collectively, some of their needs outweigh the needs of us here in this room. But I was also kind of curious because we had a number of plugins that were sort of telling people to hold off on upgrading to WordPress 5.0 or to wait until January or until the point update. So we had a kind of nice A/B test in that version 4.7 of WordPress was actually released on an identical December 6th in 2016. And so looking on the second day after the release, we had about 2.2 million installs of WordPress 4.7. For WordPress 5.0, we already have 2.3 million installs. This is as of day 2. This is continuing to grow. So I think there are rightly some people who want to wait for a future version of Gutenberg or want to for the holiday season, which is totally fine. They can delay their release. But we're seeing that the kind of early adoption numbers are very similar. It's also worth noting that because it came out on a Thursday, many of the hosts have not started their auto updates because many managed WordPress hosts will actually update your WordPress for you. You don't have to click a button or do anything. So this is, to my knowledge, for all the major WordPress hosts, just people clicking the button within a WordPress dashboard. So actually pretty cool. And the support loads and the feedbacks and the support forums and everything have been pretty smooth. I was even very excited that you shared in the core editor channel the other day that the support loads they see for people upgrading to 5.0 are about the same as what they've seen before. 5.0 also has an interesting effect on the Gutenberg plugin. Because 5.0 deactivates Gutenberg and you can choose to reactivate it, we've had about 162,000 of the testers of the Gutenberg plugin deactivate it. Of course, part of making this big a change, and part of what we started promoting over the summer in addition to Gutenberg, was a classic editor plugin. Because we want people to be able to install something, a plugin we created actually called the Classic Editor, and we've committed to supporting to the end of 2021, so a few years. They could install that, and then whenever they auto-updated or clicked the button to update to 5.0, they would keep the old editor, and nothing would change for them, besides the version number, perhaps some other ancillary benefits that have gone into WordPress 5.0. So we were hoping to remove the fear that people had. It's also probably a good way to track people opting out. We promote the Classic Editor in the post-upgrade screen for WordPress 5.0, so pretty prominently for anyone who prefers the old editor or uses integration or a plugin or assistive technology or anything that might work better with the old editor, they can see it. And actually, since 5.0, we've seen the Classic Editor go up by 124,000 installs. So that was 2018, and yeah, all that happens. Thank you. I would drop the mic, but it's on a thing. There's a saying I love, like either you win or you learn. We also learned a lot in 2018 and since the last State of the Word. I want to highlight a few lessons that I'm personally taking away from this entire cycle. First is that we need the various teams across WordPress working together better. I don't think it makes sense to have entirely separate meetings and everything for PHP and accessibility and privacy and all these different things. This should be a part of every single feature and everything that we develop from the very beginning. So whatever core is, those elements should be integrated from day one. We still need to keep learning JavaScript even more deeply, as was perhaps demonstrated by the show of hands a little bit earlier. People's ability to participate in this new generation of WordPress is limited by JavaScript knowledge. I feel that is one of our biggest gating factors. I think that we need to continue to do every single, probably even move to where we have more JavaScript talks at WordCamps than PHP talks, where we're doing more tutorials, more workshops, getting more of the new generation of WordPress books that are written about WordPress 5.0 and above. I think should teach people the basics of JavaScript so they can learn the syntax and learn that it's not that scary. And start to promote more tools, amazing tools like Ahmed's, that actually show how easy it is to create blocks. We learned the tough way the importance of triage and code freezes. As you might have noticed, we missed the originally scheduled date for WordPress 5.0, and that was due to the best of intentions. We merged some code that was trying to fix an edge case, a small bug, and that merged and caused a regression. There were some people updated to one of the betas that actually got a white screen on the editor from a JavaScript error. Really bad experience. We fixed it within hours, but it really shook people's trust in the 5.0 release process, and that's why we had to delay it for a few weeks. We did not rush it, though. As I pointed out on one of the threads, actually our distance from 5.0 release candidate to 5.0 release was exactly 2 weeks, which is exactly the average of the previous few releases distance from release candidate to release date. But another mistake that I'll take extra personal responsibility for was we were scared to announce a new release date after we missed our previous one. And that created a lot of sort of fear and uncertainty where I was trying to give like symbols, signs that, we did this release candidate, that means WordPress is coming out really, really soon. But we never talked about the average date between release candidate and a normal release until we announced our new date, which was a few days before the 6th. So I completely understand where the date seemed to come out of the blue and was very stressful for people. Some of the more positive things we learned were that the betas were more tested than any other releases. We've talked about feature plugins and things like that before. Not many people know this, but for betas and release candidates of core WordPress versions, we usually have under 10,000 and usually under 5,000 active sites using them. So having 700,000 sites running the Gutenberg plugin was over 100 times improvement in the number of testers that were happening before release. It's part of the reason Gutenberg was able to become so much more robust prior to it going out in 5.0. And finally, open source is amazing, and open source is difficult to develop in public. We had a lot of struggles here. Gutenberg happened entirely in the public eye. You can go back all the way to the beginning. You can see the change sets. You can see the arguments. You can also see the people reviewing versions from a year ago and giving it 1 stars, which isn't necessarily bad. You can see people essentially using our review system on the plugin directory to vote against Gutenberg coming into core, which is fine, but it's not necessarily reviewing the plugin. It's more sort of expressing what they thought the future of WordPress should be, that perhaps we need a different medium or way for people to go to. So that is, I think, just something we have to keep in mind as we move forward. A lot of people who've come up to me so far at this WordCamp have said, 5.0 seemed like it was going to be terrible, and post-release, it's been pretty quiet. Or there seemed to be like this was one of the most controversial or most acrimonious release processes that we've had in a long time, maybe ever, if you're new to WordPress. Some of the old ones were pretty bad, but I blame Twitter partially. You can blame almost everything on Twitter. Between Twitter and Facebook, we have all the world's problems. But I also think that it was part of the result of some of this development and some of the warts and some of the debates and some of the sort of open source product. For a normal company, all this would happen behind the scenes or not at all. For us, we have all of this happening in public, and it's all archived and linkable and version controlled and everything. So we just have to keep in mind that, in addition to trying to treat each other well and have good etiquette and really converse in a productive way for whatever we're doing, keep in mind that things might appear worse than they actually are. Because the conversations and the things happening on Twitter or in the blog post or whatever else might not actually be representative of the basics or fundamentals or first principles of the software. Finally, one exciting thing that didn't really fit, but I just wanted to show y'all because I think it's pretty cool, is this year sites using SSL, WordPress sites using SSL, actually crossed over the non-SSL sites. I'm very proud that we were one of the earliest supporters and adopters of the Let's Encrypt. I'm proud of all the hosts that support WordPress that have adopted low-cost or free SSL certificates and we move people onto them. We've had, the 20% increase, that's an absolute increase. So that's going from around like a 37% to 57% in 1 year, and it looks like it's continuing. So we are seeing the possibility that when you get the right technology in the hands of people for a low cost, it can actually really change something fundamental about the web, which I find kind of beautiful. So that is kind of the WordPress updates for a little while. Now, I'm going to briefly go through some of the community stuff, because the community is, of course, part of what makes WordPress so exciting. At different WordCamps, we've been growing every year. We've had about 145 WordCamps in 48 countries this year, which is wild. 45,000 tickets sold. And one of the things that I think is most exciting is the organizers. Over 1,300 organizers organized those 145 camps, and that is up 33% year over year. 2,600 speakers, and also an exciting 1,100 sponsors. WordCamps are cool, but of course we know meetups are bigger. These are typically the monthly get-togethers that WordPress folks will organize, and sometimes there's even a few in a given town. We're now up to over 350,000 members of the meetup group, which is a 50% year-over-year growth. That is wild. These are a lot more people going to the 687 meetup groups all around the world. 687, that's a lot of different cities. That's a lot of different neighborhoods of cities. On the foundation side, we were able to do 12 events, which is tripling the amount that we did last year of the Do Action. So these are where WordPress and other folks get together to support charitable organizations by creating them an amazing WordPress website that is totally free, and as we talked about earlier, is something that can grow with them and doesn't lock them into anything. They were as far ranged from McAllen, Texas, which notice doesn't really have like a airport code or anything, to Bristol, Stuttgart, Germany, Beirut, Montreal, Port Harcourt. Where is NGA? Nigeria? Oh, wow. That's really cool. We had a number of open source workshops. So these are bringing folks into learning how to contribute to open source, often starting from a more basic technical level. We had these in Ghana, India, St. Lucia, and Colombia. And this year, we're proud to announce that the WordPress Foundation is able to donate and support with grants to Internet Archive, Girl Development, and Black Girls Code. We were very excited to be able to do 30,000 of grants this year. Our ability to continue to do so might be hindered in the future. So as I talked about last year, you can donate to the WordPress Foundation, and there's a little straight button and everything for it. Since last year, $3,445 have been donated. That is total for the year. It's not per month, not per day. So let's give a round of applause to the 85 donors. Thank you. We are working on updates that will actually highlight the donors on the website. And if you have in some way benefited from WordPress and would like to support organizations and events like we just spoke about, please consider going and perhaps becoming an annual recurring donor on WordPressFoundation.org. WordPress.org, by the way, different website, we finally kind of loosened and were able to ship a number of really great improvements, including a completely new About page, a completely new download page, completely new profiles, a support page, and then, of course, this beautiful /Gutenberg, which actually allows you to live use the Gutenberg interface right on the landing page. I am very, very proud of all the teams that worked on this. I think, do we actually mention support? Did I go through that? Yeah, we've got the Help Hub launched on support. That's a project 3 years in the making. There's been a lot of work that's gone into making this happen. As we improve, WordPress.org is kind of like our home, our building. It's where we make the things that we make. And so any improvements we go there, I think, have great effects down the road of both making our work better, but also making it easier for new folks to get involved. Because remember, the vast majority will not come to WordCamps or even ever see this. We haven't done this before, but I'd like to pick a theme song for 2019, a theme that goes through everything. We're going to play it, but we weren't sure about the copyright. So I encourage you all to check out Tighten Up by Archie Bell and the Drells. Amazing song, a lot of fun. It's actually, in the intro, they talk about how it's a little band from Houston, Texas. I'm from Houston, Texas, so I was very happy about that. Thank you, Texas. A lot of what we want and need to do in 2019 is tighten up. We've built this new foundation. We now have the foundation that we can build the next 15 years of WordPress on. We've got the JavaScript, we've got the APIs, we've got the development frameworks, we have the user interface frameworks that can scale from the simple to the complex. We've got the themes, we've got the plugins. You notice on the plugins page now, we've actually put Gutenberg-ready plugins above the featured plugins. So we're really going all in on getting everything Gutenberg enabled, capitalizing on the work thus far, and starting with all haste and urgency to get to the point where you can really control your entire website with Gutenberg. But we need to also tighten up everything we do. We need better engineering management processes. I talked already about release management. We need to start to really whittle down those 6,500 issues. I do understand that open issues are not a reflection of project health, but I don't think it would be bad if we really went through and were able to triage them all, and at least know that each one had been touched, and we know whether it's a real thing, what the priority is, even if it means maybe saying some of these things we'll never do. I'd rather that be explicit than something that just kind of inferred by the abandonment or no responses on the ticket. So when you get home, or if you're listening to this online or whatever, play this song. It's pretty catchy, makes you wiggle and dance a little bit, and as you go to contribute, and as we build what is coming next, the next 15 years of WordPress, maybe try to bring that attitude and jiggle and wiggle to WordPress. And that is what we got. I would like to thank some sponsors. We got key sponsors: Bluehost, Google, WooCommerce, and Jetpack were the top sponsors for this WordCamp. I want to thank the organizers. Can we give them a round of applause? I don't know about y'all, this was the smoothest WordCamp US I've ever been to. Great. Music, food, everything. And that's partly put together by over 200 volunteers. And thus concludes the state of the word. So thank you very much. Now, because everything we do is a two-way conversation, we've got a little Q&A. Once again, I'm Matt Mullenweg, matt.blog, ma.tt, or you can tweet me at Photomat. And now we're going to open up the floor for questions or anything that y'all might want to opine on of what we just discussed. Also a good opportunity for me to just repeat how amazed and proud I am at what we built over this past year. I also now understand why no one has touched the editor for a long time. Turned it out as a little controversial, but we did it. And now we're on the other side of it, and we can talk about what's next. I think to ask, we've got some mics up here on the left and right. So if you walk up, we can begin going to things. And we'll start on the right. Why don't you say your name, where you're from? Oh, my right.
Okay.
Your name, where you're from, and then whatever you'd like to ask.
Hey, my name is John Paris. I'm from here in the U.S., South Carolina.
Maybe hold it close so it stays. Yeah.
All right. How's this? Ooh, there we go. So my name is John Paris. I'm from here in South Carolina, U.S. First off, I wanted to thank you for pushing this to happen and putting significant financial resources behind it, because I know that's been pretty huge. I was wondering, though, if you could speak to the role of themes, how this all may affect themes as Phase 2 is completed.
The role of what?
Themes.
Of themes, yeah.
Yeah, because, historically, the 20 themes have been relatively simple, but there's a lot of themes in the ecosystem that do a lot more. And it seems like with Phase 2 and beyond that, the way things are registered and managed are going to change to some degree, and how you think that may affect themes going forward.
It's a good question, and thank you very much. Well, everything's going to change. And I think themes will be one of the places we see this show up first. So there's no reason why old themes can't continue to work. But to show some of that maybe visual version where what you see in the theme lines up pretty closely to what you're able to edit within Gutenberg, we're going to need themes to add new support. Just like back in the day, they might have added support for editor styles or widget areas or things like that. So what we're going to create in Phase 2 is a way for themes to essentially opt in to say, hey, because really all a header and footer is, or sidebars, are kind of like reusable content blocks. So here's where they are, and here's some sort of CSS and layout that shows where, if you're playing out Gutenberg, blocks and columns, where they should go. And so we're going to see, we've already got over 100 Gutenberg-ready themes, and 2019 kind of cheats a little by mostly being single column. So what you see on the back is kind of what you see on the front. Next is taking it where themes can actually register these additional areas, and you'll be able to have like a really elegant experience going from sort of the back end to the front end, and understanding what you're doing, how it affects, how it relates to things for all future themes. Now, this might mean, since all themes can be totally customizable, you can change the layouts, you can change the columns, you can change lots of things. I don't know if we need like 10 or 20,000 themes in the future. We might see that start to shift to more something like where there's a lower number of themes. I don't know how many, probably still hundreds though, because people like to write their own things and everything like that. But where a lot of the customization starts to move to really kind of verticals and allowing people head starts for their themes. So here's some starter content that you can modify. Here's like, if you are a Mexican restaurant, here's, the starter that puts like the images and the color scheme and like things that might be typically, something you might want if you're creating a website for that kind of business or person or anything like that. And I think that's where we're going to start to see a lot more of the kind of mass, tens of thousands of different things. And I think it's also interesting to start to think about how we could even expose and share those on WordPress.org. So keep an eye out for that as themes evolve. But I should also say, I'm not clairvoyant. So we create the frameworks, and people use them in ways never could have hoped for or imagined. And so I am also curious to see what themes are going to do next. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, let's go over here.
All right. I'm Nick Adams from WP Buffs. Had a question about the just the transparency and the release of 5.0. There was some concern about the fact that 12 of the last 11 posts on WordPress.org/blog all came from automatic employees. And there was just some concern, it seemed, of the transparency of how conversations around the release were made. So I was just wondering about what lessons have been learned that we can all apply as those who contribute as well about how we communicate going forward with 5.1 and beyond.
Sure. Now, Automatic does have, Automatic tries to follow Fire for the future. Mm-hmm. It's now a company of over 830 folks, which means that translates to about 40 plus full-time people working on WordPress core. It's working on WordCamps, it's working on a lot of things. So being one of the larger companies, it does appear to have an outsized presence. On one nice thing, though, that we did differently this release that we've never done before is we had actually a pretty wide team of release leads. And I don't remember the exact percentage, but there were more 5.0 release leads that didn't work for Automatic than there were total release leads in prior releases. So we did have some really vigorous discussion and lots of different viewpoints addressed. The other thing that I think everyone, regardless of what company they happen to work for, tries to bring to the release process or the WordPress decision-making process really is gathering as much information as possible. And that might be objective data. I think we certainly read and I think we responded to almost every single review of Gutenberg, probably over 1,000 of them. Mm-hmm. We read Twitter. We read the blog post. We read Post Status. We read WP Tavern. We read the comments on YouTube. Like even things that they say you shouldn't do.
Yeah, don't read the YouTube
to try
comments.
To try to get as much input as possible. And that is part of the art and science. Like maybe the science is some of the data that comes in, like the numbers that are adopting the classic editor or the Gutenberg plugin. And the art is really trying to make sense of all the different things people are saying and balance that. So I would say the standard that we should hold everyone to, regardless of whether they work for Automatic. Yoast had a ton of contributors in this release, which was really impressive. I think Bluehost now has 5 full-time people on core. GoDaddy is expanding their core team. We're going to see a lot more people that are being sponsored and contributing full-time. And by definition, because they're spending a lot more hours and weeks than perhaps someone who's not working full-time, they're going to appear to be right there. But regardless of company affiliation, we have a way that we do things in WordPress. And that is what's really important. And I think it's great if we can, when we talk about these things, that we don't sort of attack the company, because often it's a very small percentage of the company that's even there. And the people working for it have been kind of donated by the company. They're often bringing a worldview and a set of experience, which actually usually isn't even that aligned with the commercial interest of that company. But that we talk about behaviors versus just saying, hey, contributors from X company are bad or evil or being too strong. We could say, encourage more folks to do more. I would love for like the 40 from Automatic to be a small percentage of the total people working full-time. We will get there. As more companies start to adopt Fire for the future, I think that this will appear to be less and less of a problem.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Appreciate it. Yeah, we can clap. It keeps you awake, right? A little movement. Right over here.
Hey, Matt. So I'm Fred Meyer from WP Shout, and first I want to say thank you for your personal role in helping move Gutenberg ahead. And I know, I mean, it can't have been especially easy to get it out the door, and I really appreciate it. And I'm really excited to see it exist. My worry about it is that in like the 2, 3, and 4 steps you mentioned, there's very little about making layout more robust in Gutenberg. So there's columns right now, but you can't do anything like margins or padding, or you can't specify how those columns work on different devices. And what I think is going to happen is, it may be the case that WordPress starts to orient itself around blocks, but all of those layout decisions that are maybe 50 or 60% of what makes a layout builder are going to be handled by the marketplace, which in general I kind of like, but it's going to kind of mean that there's a million different ways that things work in practice once again. So I'd really like to see you do as much as you can to actually define a layout language for WordPress that's a lot more robust than what Gutenberg has right now. And I'm also curious kind of how you move Gutenberg onto the front end in a way that has your participation, because once again, that's something that the marketplace is going to do, and I think right now is really an opportunity to make that as standard as it can be. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. I'm curious your thoughts on that, because I didn't see it in the 2, 3, or 4 priorities that you mentioned.
Thank you very much. I'm also worried about that. Like, that's important that we get right. I'm not so worried that I think we shouldn't start, but I think that it's something that we're going to start to develop. And a beauty of WordPress development is we can see what people are doing organically and then adopt and cherry pick the best of it. So I'm okay with some different things happening right now, much like there's a dozen plus page builders right now that all have completely incompatible data stores and design languages and blocks and everything like that. Now they're all able to build on some of this common foundation of Gutenberg. And in the future, you could even imagine a day where you could switch between different page builders and not lose your entire content. That would be pretty exciting. But we're not there yet. I would say that these are going to be ripe areas. We're just getting started with phase 2. So even though I showed some mock-ups that look high fidelity, think of those as just like the starting points. And actually, all of those mock-ups have been posted to make.core now, or make/core, make.wordpress.org/core. So I think we did post on the PHP versions, we did post on the sort of 9 areas that I talked about, and we did post of some of those phase 2 mock-ups. And the reason is that we want them to be a starting point for discussion. And we want that discussion to have where WordPress development always happens. So we can also be inclusive of, there's 2,000 people here, there are like a bajillion people who aren't here. So dropping on that thread would be a fantastic place to keep that discussion going.
Thank you.
Thank you. Left.
Hi. My name is Toru Miki. I flew from Tokyo, Japan, to be at my first World Camp US.
Where did you say you're from?
Tokyo.
Tokyo, cool.
Yeah. So my question might already be covered a little bit already, but if I may, I would like to read a question I've got here. So I gave a talk yesterday reflecting on contribution to WordPress from a contributor's point of view after teaching university art students what is and how and what could mean to online self-publish. And at the end of talk, yesterday, I presented one perspective on the mission of the WordPress, democratized publishing. And my question kind of jumps up from what I concluded at the end. So 15 years ago, and maybe even 13 years ago, I first started using WordPress. Mission, democratized publishing, to be honest, it was very vague meaning, and at least in Japanese, we had a difficult time trying to translate that just 2 words. But that was okay, I felt, because we had no other options. I think the WordPress was only kind of software that had that kind of mission, and I felt that contributing to WordPress not only meant contributing to WordPress, but the web itself. But at the end of 2018, there are so many other ways to publish online, different tools, whether you like or not, the proprietary stuff, social medias, and open source, and different technologies, and the devices, the mobile devices, has changed even how we interact our life with the web. So my first part of the question is that I would like to hear an update, or perhaps now in a little bit more details, on your thought, vision, and definition of democratized publishing. Because our surrounding environment had changed so much of it since the first time they came out. And the second part of that is that I presented one perspective or the meaning of that democratized publishing yesterday, and I think everyone here has their own thought and their own meaning and their own perspective of things, which may be, I'm not sure if anyone's here is 180 degrees difference to your statement, but maybe not quite the same, look in the same directions, but slightly different thoughts, or some may overlap. How we can cope with that difference, or in a way, how could we fill that gap or bridge that gap if we want to, or how could we keep working together even if your thoughts are different? What would you request or want the community to do?
It's good questions. Let me try to address both points, but it's also really broad, so I don't know if we have the space to fully do all of that. I talked about one version of democratizing publishing. It's okay. There's probably a more expansive definition that we could talk about. That's okay if people have different ones. It's a mission. It's broad enough that it's something that we can work on the rest of our lives. And we will break it down, the projects and ideas and tasks and different things like that. And that's where it gets a little more concrete, and different people can be involved in different ways. But fundamentally, we kind of want the web to be a more open place, and we kind of want more people using WordPress. Also, if you disagree with that mission, you can take all the code of WordPress and fork it, or do something else. And that is not a bad thing. Gary actually has a great post on the importance of forking in open source. In terms of these other, like you said, there are a lot more places you can post now. There were a lot of places even when WordPress started. There was just most of them are gone. There was LiveJournal, there was Typepad, there was the oldvox.com, there was Diaryland. There were all these sort of Zynga. Anyone having flashbacks? There were all these different places you could publish. WordPress succeeded because it was more open and more flexible, and at the time provided a better user experience. I think our mistake, really the mistake of the past decade, is we didn't do the work to create Gutenberg until 2 years ago. We didn't start it, because every time we'd start it, it got really controversial, or we'd get mired in technical details, or it was just too acrimonious. We'd be too worried about backwards compatibility or something to really take it to fruition, to where it's something that we can actually present and release to the world. So some of these other specialized services have better interfaces, particularly for their use cases. Twitter used to be called microblogging, right? Many of them have many of these basic elements of publishing, embedding images, commenting, sorts of things. And you could actually build most of these services on a WordPress backbone. They weren't because we weren't innovative enough on the user experience. I think we're actually now leapfrogging. So we've created something that allows a lot more flexibility and more power. And because of the WordPress ecosystem, actually supports more blocks and everything like that than anyone else does, even a few days after the release. And this, I think, gives us an opportunity to recapture the web that was. And whether we do so or not, though, depends 100% on the user experiences we create.
Okay. Sorry, it's not a question, but I'm going to bounce to the next question, just so we can. It's not a question, it's just one request. Can I make just one request?
Sure.
Yeah. I would like to request, if I may, with all respect, to give you a homework to write this answer and publish it in either on your personal blog or on a .org in some way or another. For the reason it can be translated accurately to people around the world, because it's only 50% of WordPress locales is in English.
Yeah. Oh, homework to blog, I'm happy to do it. So thank you. Over here.
Hi, my name is Victor. I'm from Miami, Florida. Although I identify as a Central American with a lot of close Canadian friends. But one of the things I've taken away from this particular conference and speaking with previous WordCamp Europe organizers is the idea of embracing neighboring regions and, not discouraging where an event like WordCamp Europe can be hosted. And so I suppose my question is, was it perhaps a small oversight where, WordCamp United States, as was sort of dictated in State of the Word, where other regions around here, which obviously you want to draw from, discourages a large area and base like Canada from hosting what would be a landmark event on this side of the world?
Yeah, so why isn't it called like WordCamp North America? Yeah. It's a little less catchy, but we'll probably do it at some point. How many Canadians do we have here, by the way? Yeah, round of applause for our Canadians. This used to be called WordCamp San Francisco, so we've expanded a little bit. The idea was to have at least one sort of major keystone event per year, where I put on a suit, present this sort of things. We can kind of, towards the end of the year, where we can kind of reflect on where we've been and where we're going. What it's called could almost be anything. It was called WordCamp San Francisco for many years, and when we started moving it around, so it wasn't in the same place, also San Francisco started to get pretty expensive, we switched it to US. I would be happy to have a WordCamp US in Montreal or Vancouver or other cities. And I believe we've even had some proposals from some other cities to host. So the next 2 years we will be in St. Louis. So those were still, maybe we'll still call them WordCamp US. But I would love for our first WordCamp US not in the United States. Perhaps we can change that name when that happens. So keep organizing and maybe do a proposal next year for hosting, I guess that would be 2021 and 2022.
That's good.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Birgit from Germany, and I'm wondering how the foundation of WordPress can expand more to support people who are investing so many time into contributions to WordPress and are not covered by business. For instance, like Heather Burns for creating more awareness about privacy, or people who are creating more accessibility. I saw Automatic is sponsoring or pledging for the WP Campus accessibility audit. But what can we do as WordPress community or the WordPress Foundation to set more funds to support such people who are not covered by companies?
That's a good question, and definitely something we consider, many times. Right now, the WordPress Foundation has 0 employees. So you can all the filings are online. You can see.
I apply.
You apply to be an employee? Oh, well, part of the nice thing about having 0 employees is that as soon as you have 1 employee, you need HR. You need health insurance. It starts to actually create a lot more overhead, and the more importantly, I feel like you need a good management structure, so that people are getting the proper feedback, that they're growing, that they're contributing in a way. You kind of need that oversight that happens. One of the great donations that companies do when they devote people to work full-time is they also provide all that for those people, including the management and oversights. And I actually think it is not a bad hurdle because there are literally so many companies trying to hire people to contribute full-time to WordPress. It maybe is not a bad hurdle that if you can't get hired by any of them, maybe you're working on something that isn't a good fit. But if there is a specific area, feel free to raise it to me, because I talk to all the companies that are trying to hire lots of WordPress contributors, and they're often asking me, what do we need more of? And so lately that's been more JavaScript, more design. Yeah, no, I actually have been saying that. Thank you, Mo. Areas where we're a little bit weaker in terms of contributors, and happy to start to put the bug in the ear for other types of things in the future, actually, as you already have done just by asking the question. So thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Matt, Adam from Colorado. You mentioned before in your talk that people were using 1-star reviews as a way of expressing their goals for the future of WordPress. And you said that perhaps there was a better avenue or channel that we could develop for that. I'm curious about your ideas for what that might look like.
Whew, that's a tough one. I don't know. We also had, on the 5.0 target release date announcement, I think one of our busiest P2 threads ever, 200 plus comments, some better than others. I don't know. Pure voting would be weird, right? Because it's not really necessarily representative. elections would be hard, right? Choosing actual representatives in kind of like a representative democracy sort of way is hard. So I don't know, maybe we can create on BuddyPress or WordPress or something a better forum for this. We've had an ideas forum in the past. We've had like a vet section of WordPress.org where people can just complain. Like maybe there's like a version 2 or version 3 of some of those where we can have capture more of that, almost like petitions for various things that we want to do or prioritize. So, but it doesn't exist yet. If you're excited and working on that, I'm happy to put some experiments up on WordPress.org and so to get involved with the meta group.
Sounds good.
Thank you. No, just kidding.
Hello, I'm Morten from Planet Earth.
Stay a little closer to the mic.
Right, sorry. I wanted to talk to you about the use of the word we. So you said earlier today, we never talked about the release dates until we were absolutely sure. And previously you used the word we to refer to the people in this room. And then you used we to refer to all the people that use WordPress. And then sometimes you use we to refer to something that sounds an awfully lot like Matt Mullenweg. This is actually more of a question of leadership than it is about we. It's framed within how we use the term we. So just to give you all some context, in all the make blogs, there's this common consensus that if like the accessibility team or the themes team or any other themes post something, they post it under the moniker we because it's something that comes from the team, right? Now, in the post that came out about the release of 5.0, it said, we have decided to release da-da-da. And if you read the comments, there was a bunch of people who said, who is we? Where was this decision made? Where's the insight into all this and what's happening here? I think the community needs to have a better understanding of what leadership looks like in WordPress currently, what the vision is for leadership moving forward. But we also need some clarity in language, because this language that's being used is awfully confusing the way it is. So specifically, I actually want to know who we is who made the decision for this release. Not because I necessarily disagree with it, but because I don't know, and no one knows, because who was there, what decision was made, how did that happen, in what forum was this, where can we look at it? And secondly, I would like to hear your thoughts about who this we leadership group is and how that works, because we make decisions about the next leaders. We make decisions about when things are going to be released. We make decisions like, we're going to do Gutenberg. Who is we?
Good question. I mean, we is contextual, right? So you can look at the context of where it's being talked about to ascertain what it was. Sometimes we might have not have done that as well. So to answer specifically your question, the we that I meant when I said we've decided on this release date was the 5.0 release leads. And where it was decided was in a channel where we were debating and talking about it. And I also said an I in there as well, where I said I take responsibility for it because it was rough. And so I'll take personal responsibility and say me or I for holding off on announcing a new date. And then finally, my name was on the post for the date that was announced. But I don't just go in a cave and come up with these things. We tried. How am I using we here? The we is everyone who showed up to the dev chats tried to have conversations about this. And it turned out to be really, really difficult to have a conversation. And, we, WordPress, default to being very, very open, where anyone can contribute to any of our threads, any of our Slack channels, any of our weekly meetings, anything like that. One of the challenges was a lot of people were showing up who had never contributed to WordPress before, and were kind of crowding out the kind of core team's discussion and debate about where the release date could happen, or whether the software was ready, or what bugs were urgent, or things like that. So you're completely correct that I would say the changing context of we is one of the biggest challenges that we have in both being kind of radically open, where anyone is allowed to participate in any of these things, outside of the 5.0 release leads, which were announced and chosen. But it's also part of why we did create a private channel just for the 5.0 release leads. So we could have a conversation that was, by the way, every bit as feisty as the public one, but among people who were part of the group, meaning there wasn't any drive-by folks. I mean, could you imagine at your company if, like, just sometimes you were, like, deciding something and then random people would come in and, like, talk for 5 minutes, or, like, it's a very difficult way to develop things. And that's what I meant when I talked about open source is amazing. Open source is hard to develop in public. I'm okay with this trade-off, meaning that sometimes we might default to doing things in the open or debating them on Slack channels or in P2 posts or some things like that. But ultimately, we need to make a decision. And that decision will not reflect or be agreed with everyone who participated in the discussion. But as much as possible, we should have those people heard and that they had an input into it, even if the outcome is not what they would have liked. And I think something we can always continually improve on is helping people feel like they were heard and understood in it. And the extent that I did a lot of work in the weeks leading up to the 5.0 release, trying to listen and hear and understand as many people as possible. Those were definitely inputs that led to the decision that the software is ready. In addition to more objective things like how many bugs are open, what's the severity of them, does anyone really care about responsive images? That was just for you. So that is, but feel free to ask. I didn't actually see the comments that asked who we were in the P2 thread. I did respond to like 24 others, but I must have missed those. But you can always ask, and I'm happy to clarify. And if English is not your first language as well, I completely understand where things might be confusing as you go through. So, thank you.
Can I just add a comment to that?
Sure.
You do realize what you're describing is a governance structure designed without governance, right?
If only there were a meetup for that.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Matt. My name's Andrew Taylor. I'm from Portland, Oregon. I'm on the hosting team, and I know release date was big for a lot of folks, but you mentioned that this was the longest release, almost by like 1 day between releases.
Between major versions, yeah.
Between major versions, and Gutenberg has had a kind of release to it every 2 weeks. So I was wondering, you mentioned also that if you look at RC history, you could kind of infer that this date was coming. Can you be more direct about release cadence in the future? I know there's been talk of a fast follow, but when can we expect that? And can we expect another 2-year gap, or is the cadence going to be tighter in the future?
Good question. Let me tell you about my dreams, because this is what I think about. I would love to get to the point where you're not thinking about what version of WordPress you're on. You're essentially choosing a channel. Like, give me the code that's super baked and stable. Let me be a little riskier and run beta stuff. And then for the folks actually involved in development, like, let me run today's version of the code that's probably been tested by only a handful of people. This is very similar to like the Canary channel on Chrome, or there's other large software used by actually far more people than WordPress that follow this kind of thing. In terms of future minor releases to WordPress, we are hoping to get out a kind of minor bug and enhancement release to 5.0 before the end of the year. So that probably means in the next 2 or 3 weeks. That will be, think of the plus 0.0.1 version of 5.0. There's just a lot of things that, because we froze the code, they're fixed, they're ready to go, they're nice enhancements. We got some performance increases as well, but we were freezing the prior code to get the rest done. What I would really like to move to, I don't know if 2 weeks is possible, though I think it's good to aspire to, is where every time there's essentially such a regular cadence that we can launch, essentially start development on the next sprint or 2-week sprint and freeze the previous one. So that sort of branches into an RC that goes out to everyone who wants to test it, people who are on more of the beta or stable channel, and then a week later, we can release it to the world. So when we get to that more regular cadence, I think it's going to be better for all users of WordPress. So that's the minor releases, major releases. I think that covered it, right? Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's pretty good. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. And let's start wrapping up here. So last questions. Last couple.
Hey, Matt.
Howdy.
Michael Bissett of SoFly. You piqued my interest earlier about the idea of having native multilingual functionality in WordPress. Today, we've got players like WPML, Polylang, the fellows at Multipress. Hi. They're back there in the green shirts. But I'm wondering, granted, it's planned for 2020 plus, so maybe there's not that big of a sketch yet. But I'm curious, what's this going to look like from a functional standpoint?
And also, what does it look like in a post-block world? So the blocks perhaps provide a different layer of granularity or control that you might want to branch out a site written in one language into other languages. I don't know, and I actually don't want to sort of prescribe any particular technical direction, because we just need to do some experiments and see what works best there. There's been promising work around multi-site, so where each kind of language is its own site, and then you have something running to kind of synchronize them or show like what's built in one language and not the other. You could also do similar things by sending permissions and custom post types and all sorts of other ways you can kind of skin that cat. And I don't know exactly what's going to be right there. I kind of want us to get more of the customization out of the way for us, because I think it's really interesting if you truly internationalize a site. Maybe you're not just translating the words, but actually translating the layout, translating the images, translating all parts of the site in ways that today might express themselves as a different theme, but in the future, we could have some sort of workflow, collaboration workflow attached to that is completely driven through the WordPress interface, which I would find pretty exciting. So don't worry, there's nothing that's been decided there. There's no we that has decided something. It's just something that I want people to start thinking about. I want us to start discussing it and debating it, and kind of aim for that once we get some of this stuff out of the way and in a really good place where we're not seeing testimonials and quotes and user tests like we saw earlier, that this is probably one of the next big things we need to address with WordPress.
All right, thank you.
Cool. All right, we'll do one more, and then you can be the last one. All right, so next to last.
Hi, my name is Dmitry. I'm the founder of a theme shop called Theme Patio, and also lead organizer of WordCamp Moscow twice. My question is, for quite a long time, there was this notion that theme is responsible for visual representation of the website, and plugin is for adding functionality and more complex stuff like that. Now, after the release of WordPress 5.0, we have basically theme is responsible for basic styling, adding CSS, maybe some basic JavaScript, and nothing more. And people start releasing plugins that add blocks, which is fun. And you also mentioned that in one of the next phases, you may want to introduce a repository for blogs. So can you elaborate on that? Do you see that happening, and how fast, and what should happen with plugins that already introduce new blocks, and how do you see that? Yeah.
Well, we're going to see, right? I think that a lot of the effort that currently goes into making themes can go into making blocks, combinations of blocks, pre-made layouts, kind of these configurations, essentially. A future version of what I showed with that import and export of JSON, I think is like the first bits of what is going to become really what is exciting for people building their WordPresses in the future. I also think that it'd be nice to have a clean, well-lit place for everyone to find these, just like the plugin and theme directories aspire to be today. And I would love for there to be essentially parallel to the plugin directory, a block directory, and then parallel to themes, kind of a layout builder type thing, so you can choose different stuff. But I don't know what that exactly is going to work like. And in the meantime, it's going to be a little wild west of different plugins themes. I do encourage any blocks being registered to be in a plugin, so please don't do that in themes. And that might even be an official guideline. But what's cool about that is it then allows more portability across themes and more of that kind of design happening in a way that also is more portable. It's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, so you do see it as like a different entity in terms of themes, collection of blocks, and plugins in future.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Cool, thank you. And thank you for organizing WordCamp Moscow. It's one of the places I want to make it out to. All right, shutting it down.
Hi, Matt. My name is Christy Chirinos, and I am one of the co-owners of Caldera WP. We make Caldera Forms, a drag-and-drop form builder for WordPress.
Woohoo!
Woo! And my question to you is, now that Gutenberg is out, how are we going to tell people outside of WordPress about it? How are you going to make sure that people who have been burned by WordPress, people who fill their mouths on Twitter and elsewhere saying that WordPress sucks and to use something else, know that Gutenberg is out, that WordPress is better than ever, and that they need to try it out?
Yeah. What do you think?
I asked you. You can't hit me back with a question.
Okay, this is officially the tougher question side of it. For all future WordCamps, go to the right side if you are going to ask the tougher things. I think we need to continue what we've been doing. Like, that's why I highlighted like how many WordCamp sessions, how many talks, et cetera, have been done on this. How we talk about it, there is an interesting question there on terminology. We're calling it the block editor. So once it's in WordPress, it kind of is, I think within the interface, it makes more sense to refer it to the block editor. It's also easier to contrast a block editor to a classic editor. So that's a lot of the terminology that we've been using in new documentation. Outside of that, the Gutenberg name has really taken hold. It's also not trademarked or anything. So you can go to Drupal Gutenberg whatever it was, I don't remember. And that is the Drupal version of Gutenberg. And that's kind of beautiful because this now allows, we're not just affecting 32% of the web when we can make improvements. When we improve Gutenberg, that could potentially go even to other CMSs, even to other native mobile apps in the future. Maybe even other social networks can adopt it. Wouldn't it be cool if, like, when you're creating your emails on MailChimp or Constant Contact, that was a Gutenberg builder and had the same blocks? And perhaps they even allow you to port in the blocks from the open ecosystem, so you can do cool things to it, and then they transform it into the HTML and CSS that's appropriate for email, just like the AMP plugin is transforming it into the subset that's appropriate for AMP sites. So this, I could have never even imagined that sort of adoption 5 or 10 years ago. I kind of wrote a public love letter to the Drees. Drupal is my other favorite open source project. I think they're really cool. We learn a lot from each other. And we'd talk. We'd hang out. We'd say, hey, is there anything we can do together? And we'd always come up like, can we have plugins work across it? No, because then you have the data layers, and we both have our authentication. We both have all our functions, all the helpers. Like, it's hard to find something. But with Gutenberg, we've created a layer of abstraction that plausibly, not just in theory, but in reality, now has the same code running across Drupal and WordPress. And I think that is just even better than I could have imagined. So we need to continue to educate people, teach them how to use blocks, make more tutorials, make more block builders. And I think actually the built-in directories will help a lot. If we do it right, we can make it so that when you're in Gutenberg and you search for something that's not there, we can also show you the directory results. And by clicking on it, it'll in the background install a plugin, activate it, and then the block enters right there. It can be completely seamless. So again, you're not just building your site or page with what you happen to have installed. You're building with the wealth of flexibility and control that WordPress provides. So, all right. With that, thank you.
Thank you.
Before we break, I did want to show you a little video if you haven't seen this yet. We made a release video for 5.0 Bebo, but also shows a little bit of phase 2. So if you will grant me a minute, let's go ahead and click play here. Thank you all so much. What we accomplished this year, I didn't think was possible. So thank you all, and I appreciate it. That's it.